Good morning. Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty, Haggerty 10. You know the Twitter handle by now. I'm joined by Sean Martin at Sean Martin TCW Twitter handle and Alison McConnell. The three amigos are reassembled. How are we doing, guys? We all right? We good?
Not
too bad, thanks, Tony.
You can fight over who you want to be in the three amigos, okay? But I'll go to Canyo because of the dark hair.
Right.
You can
I
fight
was
over
thinking of the movie.
Yes, I think a lot of people think we're comedians as well, Alison, into the bargain. There you go. Now the bandwagon rolls on to Monday night, guys. Quarter-final Scottish Cup tie. Dundee United versus Celtic. Alison, it's a tricky venue, but Celtic can take another step closer to the domestic treble if they can cope with that. But Andrew's saying he expects a tough game because he's had a couple of tough games against Dundee United already this season.
Yeah, I think Tam Courts has got them set up well. I think they'll be pleased with just where they are just now in terms of their league campaign. I know there's been moments of inconsistency. There have been times when they've been without key players too, but I think Dundee United have been one of the impressive teams this term in the top flight, and I think they have a home tie. They'll want to make life as difficult and as problematic for Celtic as possible. You know the kind of game that you're walking into, and I think so much depends on how Celtic play and how they impose themselves on the game. I think what you saw at Livingston last weekend was an energy and a tempo about Celtic again, and they'll have had 8 days off before they go and play that game. So I think you'll get an indication of how the game's going to go in that opening 15-minute, 20-minute spell by how Celtic start, because I think that can be so key to what comes after it.
Sean, one of the previous visits to Tannadice, they won 3-0 and they were terrific. Liam Dale's got his first goal that day, but Tom Rogic and David Turnbull also on the score sheet. But it was a brilliant performance, especially the first half.
That was the Callum McGregor as Paul McCartney game. As Joe Hart pointed out in yesterday's presser, it's not actually been easy, even though that 3-0 was, it was arguably one of their best performances of the season. That's why we mentioned it in that kind of section of our chat yesterday, Tony. But I always mention the first league game against them earlier in the season for the reason that Jota was just really only in the door, and yet he was the guy that the team turned to when it wasn't working. You have all heard me say that numerous times, but that's the way that it stuck in my head. And he hit the woodwork like 3 times or whatever it was that day, and ultimately it didn't get them over the line because they drew 1-1, but it still stuck in my head for that reason. So Heart's been spot on. They've won 2 out of the 3 games against Dundee United that they've played this season, but it's not necessarily been easy. The 1-0, we'll go back to 3-0 first. That was, I would argue it's up there with the best performances. And even the 1-0, which was the one Liel Abada scored, that will live long in the memory for me, but not so much for the performance, more the fact that I watched it on my phone in a Paisley Labour ward the day my daughter was born. But it was, he's right to say that it's not been easy. As I say, 2 out of 3, it ain't bad, but it's not been easy. Dundee United are a weird team in general. I think when that 3-0 game came up, I think they had the 3rd best defence in the league at the time. Celtic just about doubled the amount of goals they'd conceded in the league. They were doing really, really well. They've not won a league game now in over a month, but they've actually only lost 2 since January 22nd because they draw a lot. I think it's 5 in their last 8 games they've drew. It's not a league game, so you can only think about the league so much at this point, but it's still a good way to gauge where they're at, and they're embroiled in this kind of 6 or 7 team fight for a top 6 spot, probably looking to get 4th, to be honest, if everything goes well for them. So they've actually got bigger things to think about than just the cup. Not that they're going to be distracted, but they have got bigger things to think about.
Andrew was saying yesterday, Alison, that the shackles are off in cup games. You just have to go for it. So he expects a totally different game because the pressure's off and they're not trying to get 3 points. As Sean says, they might have their mind on other things, but a one-off cup game, you just take it as it comes, don't you? But he expects a kind of Dundee United team to have a go at Celtic.
Yeah, I think that's what I think that would suit Celtic. I think the more open the game is, the more that it plays into Celtic's hands. So I don't know. I think Dundee United might try and keep it quite tight and then look to hit Celtic on the break or look to utilise any openings that they get. I think they'll try and constrict Celtic in the opening stages. I don't think they'll go gung-ho and hell for leather from the kickoff. I could be wrong. I think the last thing they'll want is to leave too many gaps early on, because you know that Celtic from middle to front can be, they have rapid acceleration. They've got pace in the team. They can hurt teams when they find themselves, in that scenario. So I think there will still be a caginess to it at stages, and I suppose it just depends on how the game plays out and whether or not Celtic get an early goal. I think if Celtic get an early goal, it kind of encourages Dundee United to open up that bit more.
Sean, the 8-day break that Simon Thomas referred to there, how crucial is that for Celtic at this stage? I mean, Ange spoke about it. He's just been trying to refresh guys and, rest and recuperation and all that, and just sort of nurse guys along, but he's not used it as a time to knock some hard training into them.
I don't know how much I read into that, because on the flip side, you hear him say pretty consistently that they train the way that they want to play, and the players mentioned the intensity of the training. Joe Hart again yesterday in the presser said he wasn't even thinking of the game. He was talking about living in the moment stuff. He's like, I'm not even thinking of the game, because I've got 2 training sessions before then that I've got to get through, which kind of tells you the intensity of the train at. So I don't know how much I'd read into that, but it goes back to what the three of us said, I think, on Monday, about how we might use the extended kind of 3 week in terms of not just nursing them along, not just using it for recovery between games because they play 3 times a week, but having that wee extra couple of days on the training ground to iron out a few things. But Alison mentioned set pieces. There's other things as well. All that will play into it, and I think whatever he's been working on, he'll be looking for it to pay off immediately, I would think.
He did say also, Alison, that training's very competitive. So read into that what you will. The guys are trying to force their way into the manager's first team plans. And I think it was you that touched on it on Monday as well. We kind of spoke about it, that peaking at the business end of the season. So if training's competitive, you bet your bottom dollar everybody wants a place in that 11 on Monday and in the games to come. Yeah,
I think if everyone is fit and available, I still think there's a debate to be had over what the strongest 11 is. And I think there are options there. I think that's maybe the difference between now and the start of the season, is that there are possibilities of changing it. And I think competition for starting places probably is fairly intense. And when you get to this stage and you have a title within your sights, a possibility of a treble, I think everyone would be clamouring to start games and to show up well in training, because I suspect he's the type of manager that you need to be showing it first and foremost Monday to Friday if you're looking to get a start at the weekend.
Sean, that strength and depth that we've banged on about since August was noticeable last week, even put teeth in, when Giakoumakis, O'Reilly and Hatate came on at Livingston after watching Celtic put in a magnificent performance. But when they come on, even though Celtic didn't score, they still added a wee bit of impetus.
They could have scored.
I've added a shot and O'Reilly came on and still looked in the mood.
You know where I stand on it. O'Reilly actually kind of went under the radar, I thought, because he came on and created 2 chances, even though he was only on for 15 minutes. But you know where I stand on it. The strength in depth on the bench is crucial for the way that Ange Postecoglou wants to play, because if it's not quite working, or when it does work, like against Livy, there's no real drop-off if the guys on the bench are of a requisite quality to come on and kind of reinvigorate what they're already doing, that kind of thing. So it works in both ways for me. I'm going to put this comment up by David Bradley, see what you think of this, because it's not just about the cup game in and of itself, is it? It does have, or it could have ramifications for the league in terms of the confidence, the way that they approach the next couple of games, if they know they've got a semi-final to prepare for as well, all that kind of thing.
I actually thought last week's performance set them up for the league push in the cup games. Alison might agree with me. I just thought I think you used the word, there was a zip and a verve about them last week, wasn't there? That had been missing in the previous games. So I would say, in terms of setting you up for the last kind of 8 games and hopefully a semi-final and a final, I think last week was a kind of turning point in that sense.
Yeah, I thought it was a statement win at Livingston, if you like. I think it's been problematic, and I think some of that's been overcooked. But it's been a sticky place for Celtic to go, and I think the performance and the result both would appear to augur well in terms of the belief and the confidence and the energy within the squad. But I would take your point, Sean. I think it's about momentum. I think you don't want the bruising element of going out a cup and the ramifications of it, and then having a week almost before your next game to lick your wounds. I think you want to keep everything going. You want to keep it positive for as long as possible, as well as staying obviously alive and having the possibility of claiming 3 domestic trophies. I think it's also about just wanting to sustain performance levels.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big thing too. Nobody would admit it publicly, but these guys are fighting for a treble, Sean. They know it. They're at the business end, and Ange is expecting them to be there when they're handing out the trophies. So as a collective, they'll be thinking and they'll be confident in their ability to deliver that, but they'll never ever say it. Maybe
if you get big Giacomakis in the pressers again tonight, but no, you know what it is. It's an in-house type thing. But I mean, there's absolutely no doubt they're going for the treble. They were going for it at the start of the season, just as much as they're going for it now. It might be more, in a way, more realistic and more almost within touching distance now. But you know yourselves, when you're Celtic managers, Celtic players and stuff, you go at the start of every season looking to win all 3 the domestic honours anyway. Might not always pan out that way, but that is the aim.
Yeah, and Andrew said the theory is they peak at the latter stages.
Yeah,
as Andrew said there, yeah. He's mentioned that 2 or 3 times lately, and he's kind of laughed because he said, well, that's a theory. In practice, only time will tell. But that is true, Alice, isn't it? And I just thought that was noticeable last week, because it wasn't just the fact that they went to Livingston and won, because you could have gone to Livingston and won 1-0 scrappily. It was the kind of emphatic nature of the performance for me that saw them kind of go there. And you said it was a statement win. I believe that too.
Yeah, I think so. And I think you always knew when you were going through December and Celtic had this catalogue of injuries, you knew that they would get stronger as the campaign went deeper. They were able to bring in reinforcements in January, which has obviously been important in terms of just being able to freshen up the squad and maybe not be over-reliant on key players. I think that first half of the season, there was a real pressure on David Turnbull, Tom Roderick, Callum McGregor. I think the players who come in January alleviated some of the pressure on those guys. And I think now, as you're having players coming back to fitness, then the squad is obviously and inevitably stronger. But I think if last weekend is what you're going to judge it on, then you would certainly say that Celtic look as though they're hitting peak form again, getting into the run-in. But it's about sustaining that. I don't think you can look at one game in isolation. I think what you have to do now is see a similar performance on Monday night. And then if you get that, what you tend to find is a level of belief that goes through the squad. And I think it's a quiet belief. And I disagree with you slightly on the talk of the treble. I don't think it will be a conversation that they've had. I think it does become a fairly boring. You look at the game in front of you, and I think for us as journalists, like, we kind of roll our eyes when we hear it because it's boring and it's not the kind of sexy headline that we would like. But I think that in essence is actually how you get to winning trebles, is that you don't afford to look too far ahead of yourself for fear of tripping. And I think so many of those players have been over the course. They have the experience of doing it, and they'll know it's a kind of baby steps towards progression, and that there's a danger in just getting ahead of yourself.
Oh no, I totally get that. I was talking about as a collective that they might have spoken about. I'm sure they will have, to be honest, but I just
don't put this up again, David. That is, it's funny you should say that. That's exactly the term I text you, Tony, during the game.
Yeah.
No passengers in that Livy game. And I think that's a fair point, that the high tempo stuff, especially since he's setting his team up to peak at this end of the season, I think that is crucial to it.
So, if that's the case, no passengers and a high tempo, same 11 then. It starts, is it not? Or are you tweaking? Are you tinkering, Alison? Are you going to do what Ange does, be a tinker man?
I might be tempted to start Matt O'Reilly for the game at Tannadice. I think an athletic player. I think in terms of the ground he covers, I think Dundee United can be quite a physical game at times.
Who drops out then if you bring
Yeah,
in O'Reilly?
I think probably Muir Beaton, I think, might drop
right.
out, which is possibly harsh on Beaton. I think I thought he was maybe the best man in the park actually on Sunday. So I need to go and think about that a bit harder. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not setting that one in stone, but
yeah. But you're thinking there's a horses for courses team, which is clearly going to be Andy's philosophy too. With the 8 games, and
I think O'Reilly offered a real attacking threat when he came on on Sunday, and I think he has a goal in him, and he also has an assist in him, which I think might be cause for consideration.
My father was an amateur manager for years, Sean, and he used to say things like that to me, horses for courses team. And he would tell me who he was playing, because I used to watch them religiously before I went to watch Celtic, and I would say, why is he playing? And he would try and explain decisions to me and stuff like that. So, yeah, I get that whole horses for courses nature and element to the next 8/10 games if they win the semi-final and final. So, what's your thoughts? Are you yellow jersey man, fans, same team?
Team lines. I mean,
you're Tinker man as well.
Do you know that scene in Godfather 3 when Michael says, "Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in." That's how I feel about Ange Postecoglou predicting his lineups. Except it's just when I thought it was sus, he starts Forrest, Beaton, and Ralston together. I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do now. I think there is an element of horses for courses to it, and I think that's been the case all the way through the season, even if part of it was forced on him with the injury list. I do think there's the fact that it's a cup game will play into his thinking as well. I think basically what I'm saying is there'll be rotation again. I don't think it'll be the same start 11 as it was against Livy.
Yeah, is that what your bold prediction is? That's your fearless verdict that there'll be rotation. But you're not going to tell us. Well, actually, we'll declare our lineups and you'll find out our starting 11s on Monday. But it's been the most arduous and thankless task all season trying to second guess Ange. And the days when we got 10 or even 11, we were like celebrating. He has been known to produce curveballs, Alison. It wouldn't surprise me if he did again on Tannadice, as Sean said, with league games in mind. But I don't think he'll tinker too much, to be fair.
No, and I think this fortnight that the game takes place in is helpful too, because you don't have a huge amount of games. It's the first time really since December that you're not faced with a fairly heavy fixture list, so there's not an onus on thinking, well, we've got another game in 3 days that needs consideration. I think there's ample time for recovery and preparation. So I think I'm not sure if there'll be too many changes, but I'm not entirely convinced of that either.
You're going to wait to do your homework now, aren't you? Think really seriously about this. Okay, let's come to that time, Sean. Prediction time. You're going
to me first, that's all right, because usually when I say 2-0, it means it's taking the 2-0 off of 2 of you, so I'll say 2-0 Celtic.
You rat. Alison, what's your prediction?
I'm going to go with 2-1.
2-1? Oh, a tight one. I'm going to say the same as last week, 3-1. I think both teams will score. But I think Celtic might produce a similar type performance last week. And I'm inclined to agree with Alison. I don't know why, but I think Matt O'Reilly might feature as well. I think he might even score. So, yeah. But who he comes in for, don't ask me. You all read my and heard my thoughts about Muir Beaton. So, I'm loath to drop him, but there you go. We'll see. But, yeah, it's we roll on to Monday night, quarter-final Scottish Cup Tannadice. Monday night under the lights. It promises to be a right good game because Tam Coates' team, when they turn up, can be more than a game for Celtic, and I'm looking forward to it. Sean, you looking forward to it?
I am, yep.
Alison, I think you'll be there covering it as a working journalist, won't you?
Yeah, I think
you'll be busy. Will you see it then, if you're too busy?
Might be dying second half.
Well, enjoy it. Your old dad's off for a week's holiday, so you won't have the pleasure of my company in the videos unless Sean drags me out of bed and asks me to do it. So we'll see how it goes. But have a great week, guys. Enjoy the match if you're going along, and have a great weekend. And we shall reconvene on Monday. Thanks very much. Cheers for contribution.
Thanks.
Cheers, Tony. Cheers, Alison. Cheers, guys.